There you go. We've hit record.
We're on. We're live on Channel 4. Please don't swear.
Thank you, Roddy. So, welcome to episode 6 of the GEG England podcast Spotlight. Today, we've got the leaders of GEG Post-16 UK, Roddy Peters and Aleks House. Do you want to introduce yourselves?
Go on, Aleks.
I'm Aleks House, Deputy Head Digital Innovation for Adult Community and ESOL.
And I'm Roddy. I'm from the Windsor Forest Colleges group. I'm the group head of digital skills, and there are 4 colleges in our group. It's a sort of typical FE group. We've got colleges there with very distinct flavours. So we've got an agricultural college with land-based specialism. We've got a very small college in Windsor, which is a screen specialist. So it's a sort of hub for creative industries. We've got another college that's got a real history, a real tradition of heavy goods motor vehicle and construction and hair and beauty, but is really pioneering some interesting tech courses as well. So it's sort of got a digital bent now. And then we've got another college, which is our sort of traditional sixth form with A-level provision. So quite a mix across the piece.
I wish you went first.
But yes, so obviously we've been going through a series of different education. So we started with our primary colleagues, we've gone on to our secondary colleagues. Now we've arrived at Post-16. So to get us started, I want to talk about digital habits. So what's a digital habit that you see your learners bring in that you have to unlearn to help them succeed in their next chapter? So thinking about something perhaps they've taken from secondary school that now you're trying to transition them into adulthood or the real world. What are those kind of digital habits that you're having to work on them with to get them ready for that next step in life for them?
I'm going to jump in straight away and mention phones, which is a real hot potato at the minute. And I'm not a phone banner lover. I would like to get rid of pouches and boxes because you don't have a box or a pouch in real life. But equally, I say that with all the luxury of being in a classroom with 16 to 19-year-olds where there's a very much more employability focus. So we're preparing them for a world of work, and that argument is easier to make than in a primary or secondary institution. And it's evident that those previous habits, whether it be a box at the front of the room or unfettered access, do translate when students arrive with us, typically speaking, to not being able to self-manage access to a phone. So that's a problem that is obviously ricocheting right the way through education. I'm slightly nervous of a ban coming in and then it meaning that problem will move even more strongly into FE. So phones is one thing as a digital habit. I think another to look at it the other way around is that we don't have as many devices. So I was at an event earlier today thinking about how brilliant it is to have one-to-one devices. But for students who've come from an institution with that setting, I feel quite sad that we don't have that resource or provision for whatever funding reason, for whatever historical legacy infrastructure reason. We don't have a Chromebook trolley in every room like some students might have come to expect at school. So some of it is a step backwards for them, and I'd love to try and fix that as part of our digital strategy, and that's something that I'm working on to try and provide. But I'm sure as an FE college we won't be alone in that.
I mean, in our 16 plus ESOL, so it's a lot of passive consumption. So students are very comfortable with scrolling and watching, but high education and work required creating, organizing, and judging information. They're very quick with applications, but struggle with basic skills like file organization, naming documents properly, writing professional emails if they ever written emails. So we've got some of the students who have no idea how to write emails. So in our department, we're not just teaching them how to use technology, we're teaching them how to think with technology.
And I would echo that, and I would say goes so far as to say it's probably 75% of certainly my students. I tend to teach English GCSE resitting students, and most of them are unfamiliar with how to send a professional email. I get a number of emails where the entire content's delivered in the subject. So, hi sir, I'm running late, I'm not coming in today. No punctuation or capitalization, and it's all in the subject. But that's because no one's ever shown them, right? So it seems odd to me, because I have to hack my way through the wilds of various different email clients over the course of 20 years. So I understand how to do it, but that's something they don't know. And those digital basics, you know, I suppose it's not a bad habit they've got. It's habits they haven't developed or haven't had fostered. And I don't know whether that's because the curriculum's not strong enough in ICT, or whether or not there's been a COVID gap, or whether it's a combination of the both, or whether it drops off people's radar at school because of overriding concerns about different topics in PSHE. Whatever it is, a lot of them don't seem to know what seems to us bread and butter: clicking start, opening a spreadsheet, or they might know one tool and no other. I'm very passionate about saying that they're not digital natives. We talk about that generation as being digital natives. They might be native for using these for touch screen devices, sure, but that doesn't mean all digital devices. And I think people are so wowed by young people knowing how to operate the TV remote or the broadband router that it's assumed that therefore just great young people just generally across the board are great with computers, and that's a huge misconception. And we find that trying to diversify their approach with different computers so that they can approach a different operating system, a different platform, and still have the confidence to know how to interact with keyboard, mouse, and have the bravery to go and explore it, is a real key skill for us to try and impart.
And now we've got, yes, sorry, completely opposite, the other side of the coin, where we get in very long, very complicated, very formal emails written by AI, copying and pasting.
Yeah. I was going to add, completely vindicated part of my IT qualification there, because I teach professional emailing as part of a level 2 qualification, and someone asked me why I bother doing that reason. Because I can tell you, we looked at our entire secondary curriculum a couple of years ago. Unless you're doing a really structured functional skills, you never learn. You might, you know, in lots of English examples, still write a postcard, like, rather than something that would be more useful, like write a proper email.
I crowbar it into English GCSE lessons, even though, as you say, the AQA GCSE question is a letter.
Yeah.
And the chances of them writing a letter are slim to none, but actually writing an email is key. So, yeah, I've found ways to bring in CV writing and all of that, just to bend the curriculum, to stop it just being teaching to the test as well, right? Trying to prepare them for life. But those things, it feels like there's not a properly mapped curriculum that works all the way through. And particularly because of the requirement for students to stay in some form of education, I feel like the curriculum has become slightly disconnected, like a Lego brick's fallen off the end, and there's not quite the through line of thought that we might like. And I'm hoping that some review of that would help.
I was just going to add in that I think it's become now part of the trend of our podcast to describe what's going on for our listeners. As you were talking there, I could see Peter's frustrated agreement with you there, Roddy.
The email subject box is my utter pet peeve on the face of the planet. I hate it so much. So we've covered the idea of students being college ready, basically, and thinking about moving from what can be a very managed environment at school, or even for those adults that are going back to college that have been out of education for a while, having that large jump in personal responsibility. How do you see digital tools helping those young adults and adults manage their own personal responsibility around work, time management, and to help build independence?
I'll start, Roddy. So in our case, so we use a very solid structure and very consistent structure to build that independence. So, for example, Google Classroom layout weekly topics, clear lesson intentions, PDBA, a challenge, stretch and challenge, etc. So we use rubrics using Google Classroom before and sharing before the submission. We provide modeled answers, which are strong and which are still need developing. So the students building that critical thinking. We use AI as a feedback partner, included subject-specific Gemini gems, so students can use beyond the lessons and the classrooms. And in ESOL and adult learning, Gemini becomes a practice space for them. They can take it with them and practice it at home. And what one of the learners said to me on Monday, it's like having a teacher at home. So we are really working towards moving from scaffold to self-direction, and the goal is confidence, not dependence.
Brilliant. Follow that. I mean, I was going to talk about multi-factor authentication. I now feel like I'm very much the poor second cousin to Alex's answer. But I think one of the things that I find is that they go through a pain barrier of preparing for a world in which the way that we approach our networking, our IT, is very similar to the world of work, but not very similar to the world of schools. So we find that getting them used to the fact that their own personal device will receive a code in an app that they have to register for and keep their mobile number up to date is something that they find irritating, because previously they've had a QR code on the screen, or there's been a way for them just to tap in and instantly, and it's all dreamy. So preparing them for what that actually looks like in a network, and why a firewall might be there, and that a VPN isn't always a great idea just to circumnavigate that firewall. So we have a lot of conversations around that. That tends to come up with frustrations in our student conferences. But I think for me, the reason that, and Aleks has illustrated there beautifully how well Google Classroom brings it all together, is that the learning curve with Workspace is so shallow in that it's a lot quicker to adopt and understand how it works, that in just a few lessons, and they do still need those lessons, it's not completely magic and intuitive. They do still need somebody to point to a Google Doc and say, this is what we're going to use in Classroom. But they can very quickly get their hands on a tool that, crucially for me, is free for them to use at home afterwards. So we're equipping them with a skill that when they leave college, they can continue, they can port all of their stuff over to their personal account when they've gone. They can use Google Takeout to take it with them, and they've got their CV. They've got something that is free for them to use without buying an expensive annual license to use software to let them edit it. And in terms of personal responsibility, it's essentially just showing them another ecosystem or a way of approaching something that lets them be in charge of their own destiny.
It's really interesting, some of the things that you guys have already brought up, because as a primary educator, I feel attacked a little bit. Only in the sense that, like, you talk about QR codes, for example, as a way to log in, right? Which is a very primary thing to do.
Yeah.
But it's quite interesting to then hear that there's still a ripple effect 6-7 years later for some of those learners, where that's still happening for them, or they still think that's the way things have should be, that perhaps that progress isn't taking shape over their years at college, for example.
Well, potentially we need to find better ways of doing it in corporate and industrial environments, so that actually the thing that we provide there that works because it's easier, there must be a better way of doing it. I mean, I have to say that our authentication tool of choice would not be my personal authentication tool of choice, and so it takes us through a pulling teeth exercise to get students logged in. So some of their frustrations is based on the particular productivity suite that we use to get people in, but that's a legacy complaint, and that's something that their voices are accurately recognizing is something that is frustrating if it doesn't just work. We want technology just to work and do the heavy lifting, and actually make life easier. And in some cases those tensions, those pressure points, come from where tech makes more work for us. But I think that's why Classroom is such a dream, because rather than trying to share resources in some kind of shared notebook somewhere where people have to log in and interact with it and everyone can see what you've got, or it's a bit firewalled, or it's a tool that might have been designed for corporate communication, it feels like Google Classroom is a place that you can just instantly grant access to the people who should have access to what they need to see. And it's a brilliant one-stop shop as a repository. And actually classroom usage across the colleges is really strong. And there's been some really exciting uses for it. One is our Keep Warm classrooms over the summer. So our students, when they apply, get access to a college email account, and then with that, over the course of the summer before they join us, I don't know if anyone here remembers when you went to uni, there might have been a freshers portal that you could sign on to, and it let you meet some of your course mates before you arrive, or see a little bit of a video tour of the college. And that might seem old-fashioned given that my recollection of that is 20 years old, but we do that over the summer to welcome our students before they join us. And that's a nice, exciting way to use Google Classroom to make people who are not yet on site feel a tangible part of a physical place.
Yeah. And then again, you know, there are similarities too. I liked Alex talking about, again, I've had a big push on how we structure our Google Classrooms in primary education, for example, and that there needs to be structure, you know, from the beginning, and then for that to carry on in that kind of tool. Again, you're right, it's a simple tool that anyone should be able to pick up and use, really, for that efficiency. But we are going to pivot now. So we're going to talk a little bit about assessment and feedback. So post-16 and adult education, teachers face a mountain of marking, often with very diverse learner needs. Alex, in your context, what is the holy grail digital tool or workflow that helps teachers provide high quality support without burning out?
Gemini.
There you go.
Thanks so much. We'll log off there.
We don't get paid for this, you know. We don't get paid for the plugin.
No, these are the tools we use daily. Most of our learners are introduced to Gemini quite early, end of September, October time. So, and we've got a rule now. So all the ESOL students, so now they take a picture of the handwritten work and they ask Gemini, I am an ESOL. I'm really sorry, guys. I've got 2 dogs and a child out.
As a personal podcast.
I just want it for the record to be known that that was Alex's dogs growling and not me. Just growling in the background.
And just to add more context to our listening viewers, that we can't actually see the dogs. We can just see Alex batting around at something in the background.
Are you okay?
Let me invite you back to ESOL Classroom. So at the beginning of the year, so we've got 6 different ESOL levels, from complete beginners to almost GCSE level. And the teachers introduce very simple prompts saying, I am an ESOL, for example, entry 2 student. Check my work, do not rewrite. So now almost every classroom's got a rule: check with Gemini before you submit your work to your teacher. So that was huge in terms of the teacher reporting how much help it was for them in terms of reducing the work, marking work. Another example, our level 1, level 2, level 3 courses, they are portfolio based and they're very, very heavy on marking. So we created a Gemini gem, added syllabus and marking criteria built into the knowledge so the teachers can draft feedback more efficiently. Lots of people would ask the question, what about ethics, and asking students. So we are very, very transparent with the students about AI use. In Google Classroom, we use a question right at the top of Google Classroom, asking them. So we're very clear. So the teachers are going to be using AI to support feedback and marking, and the student just say, I consent or I do not consent. So we had 100% or over 2 years of students saying I consent to that. So AI is an assistant tool and the teacher makes the final decision. So human is always in the loop.
I would just jump in and echo GEMS being a really pivotal tool for just providing people who might be less technically confident to write some of those prompts themselves with a scaffold to go away and get the benefits of what AI can do. So I'm trialing in a couple of weeks' time. We've got our mocks coming up, so our GCSE mocks, which is a pretty big undertaking across the college to try and simulate thousands of exams ready for the summer so that students have a proper simulation of what that will be like. And I realized that the feedback loop is often quite lengthy in that, because we've got, you know, contractual allowances for a 2-week turnaround period. And in that time, the student's forgotten the exam question, never mind what they wrote. And we know that trying to close that loop enhances the impact that feedback will have, right? We know that the student will respond. We would be the same, that we respond better and are able to take on board the learning when it's more immediately contextual. So I'm going to offer this. I offered my level 2 animal management students the other day. I said, do you fancy being guinea pigs of taking photos of your work? No one has to do this, but take photos of your work, and we'll put it into a gem. Because I used a gem a few weeks ago, or prompted, sorry, I had a conversation in Gemini a few weeks ago where I took it through how to mark like AQA. It took a while. It was an iterative process. I went round in circles, that means, but I essentially kept hammering Gemini to do what I wanted. And by the end, I realized that the entire conversation was a gem prompt, but quite a long-winded one. And that's the point of them, right? I don't then need to go and show somebody how to step through in clear English, how to apply the next level if one bullet point's been coded on AO5. I don't need to go through that pain barrier. I can write it in the gem and then let the students have a go if they want to. Just like Alex said, they've got the opt-in choice there to go, I'm going to give it. And also, whilst knowing that because it's Gemini with their college account, it's not firing it off into the ether. They're still masters of their own IP because it's kept within your Google domain. So we know that it's that enterprise grade data security means that the students are able to interact with it in a safe way. So that gem is brilliant. And I realized only a couple of days ago, and I thought, I need to make this is a smart target gem for, you know, everyone talks about smart targets. I could probably write a target that would tick 3 out of 5 of those instinctively, but I'd still miss a couple of them off. Whereas actually, you know, turn up to all the lessons or write more aren't useful smart targets, but that's what the teacher's gut is. That's what the end product is they want. But driving them at the smart target, it just seems like such an easy, quick win to create something that's got a quick gem prompt that's got what a smart target is, and then advise it to redraft any prompt given that to align with that framework. And obviously we all know this, but to ask questions rather than hallucinate the answers if it doesn't know what one of those things are. So if it doesn't know a reasonable time frame, ask the teacher before you rewrite the prompt. So I was like, that'd be genius. And I think that it's little quick wins like that where you see the power of the technology and then people are inspired to do it themselves. So I mentioned a gem to a colleague in our ALS department, our additional learning support team, and the Senko's jaw dropped as she realized that she might be able to draft one that would help take some of the EHCP paperwork from counties, from local authorities, and pull out the key points into the spreadsheet rather than them doing it one by one, copy paste. So they hadn't got that idea until I showed them another gem. So it's some of that inspiration comes from seeing one thing and going, I've had an idea. And I don't think there is one tool, is there? You know, as much as we've just banged on about gems, the fact that you can then export to docs or export to sheets or copy and paste the HTML out of Canvas and put it in a Google Sites. There's lots of ways in which it's the fact that it works across the board and that you can bring in something from your Drive files and link up across Workspace. That's the thing I like, because it saves downloading and attaching and all that space saving or space consuming guff.
I mean, you segued me perfectly there, Roddy. Talking about the idea of bringing work together into one place. Digital portfolios are getting more and more prevalent throughout education, especially in the post-16 environments. Is there one tool? Are we sticking with Google Classroom? Is this the best tool to create these digital portfolios, or do you have any other top tips for this creation? And do you see students' confidence in their education building as they see these portfolios expanding?
Alex, do you want to jump in?
I could do. So adult community and ESOL, so we don't use digital portfolios. So instead, we trying to build everyday habits, writing professional emails, organizing files in Drive, redrafting after feedback, using AI to improve their work. What we believe in, that confidence grows in practice, and when the learners can explain how they improve their work, and that becomes their evidence.
Brilliant. So the idea of going back, looking back over what you've done and then moving forwards with it.
Yeah, I'd echo that insofar as my experience in FE is that typically speaking, a year is a year and that snapshot is individual. So it's only at the point that they are expecting to progress out of college that they start to look at what they might take with them. And it might be a CV, it might be a Google Doc in a takeout, like I mentioned earlier. Actually, the HE team, though, have done some great stuff using Google Sites and are rightfully proud of it. And for a team who might have been slightly less confident with Google tools, they invited me in to show me how they'd been using Google Sites. And Google Sites you can't share in Classroom in quite the same way, but they'd used that classic end of link trick of changing edit, the word edit, to copy. And so they'd provided all their students with a template Google site. They'd clicked copy. Well, you open it, and so long as you've changed the end of the sharing link to copy and it was initially viewable by the world, then you can make a copy and it creates one in your Drive. And they've used that a lot as an initial Kickstarter. And then, as is so often the way, people who probably wouldn't credit themselves with being particular tech geniuses have proven to have embedded loads of digital skills in those lessons, because they've shown them how to customize the site, how to embed their images, their Google Drive files, so that they've then got a portfolio online, and then how to share it correctly with the world when they're ready to, but previously up to that point with the tutor and then with the class so they can demo it. So I think Sites has got a lot of potential for that. Obviously, again, when you leave the college, you'd need to do takeout to make sure you'd still got that. But it's at least there, ready to go and ready to maintain. And having seen that great use case, I actually recommended it to a family member, bought a domain that weekend for them, and they've got on their own personal Gmail account their own professional website. They're a freelancer, and they've got now an incredible website that was done all with a bit of drag and drop. And I say that because the person concerned, I know, would not credit themselves with any tech nous whatsoever, but was able to do it. And because it's familiar, right? They know how to use a Google Doc. They know how to use Gmail. They knew how to use Google Sites very quickly.
So you guys have perfectly touched upon this as well. We always talk about AI in these conversations. You guys have already alluded to what that looks like in Post-16. Obviously, it's getting more complex in terms of plagiarism, particularly, I would say, the older the student, perhaps the more difficult it is to get them out of those habits or into those habits, or whatever way you might look at that. But how are you moving the conversation away from don't use it towards how to use it as a research or language partner?
Instead of don't use it, we would ask a question, show me how you used it. We also are quite recently, a few months into, so we introduced the guided learning mode in Gemini rather than open chat. So thinking is scaffolded step by step. Our teachers actively model how to use guided learning Gemini in Google Classroom during the lessons in the classroom, and they show how to question and doubt AI responses. So it's very facilitated before the learners can take it and use it independently. So what's actually happening in the classroom, so the teacher has the knowledge, so they can facilitate that Gemini output. And if there are any questions, so they can critique that output together. So by using it this way, the students asking for explanations, not their finished output. For essay, they can copy and paste. They use AI to check for accuracy, spot errors and biases, and they also compare AI responses to their own thinking. If before before they were actively using just Gemini Chat or ChatGPT. So now we've got more and more students saying, I want to do my own learning. So guided learning in Gemini is just the perfect tool for that.
And just to jump in on that, obviously that great feature in a gem where you can toggle which mode, which tool is applied to that gem, lets you turn on guided learning for that gem. And in fact, we were talking, there's a company that I'm sure won't mind me sharing their name once they've launched, but I was having a conversation the other day with a couple of people who've set up a tool that assesses in what frame you might better receive information. So what particular learning style you have that would be better served by text in a different format, and uses that in a gem prompt so that then you can go to your gem prompt and put that information in and read it in the way that you find accessible, which I think is such a lovely, simple, but immediately impactful approach of using a gem. But yeah, the fact you can toggle guided learning on, I think is great. I feel particularly for HE colleagues with plagiarism, in terms of being able to discern it, I think spotting it is a much harder game. I've played this down at Portsmouth University, went there a few months ago with my colleague Dan, and their business team were looking at how they could use AI, and they're really excited to use it. But, you know, they're battling with HE is a much slower moving oil tanker of decision making with things like this, certainly in terms of the administration of whether or not to turn AI on and how much to use it. Granted, this conversation is now 18 months old, so they may well now have completely changed, but my suspicion would be it hasn't. But their wariness there in an exercise was being able to identify which of the 4 essays we were given was AI. And it turns out, you know, one was human written, one was AI edited, and 2 of them were AI. And because of the academic style of them, it was really hard to work it out. But in reflecting on that, I thought how important it is that we don't funnel people into robotic way of writing. And actually I was encouraged to do that at uni. This is what a textbook looks like, right, like that. And actually the one time I ignored that and wrote from the heart because it was a history topic I cared about, the tutor was like, this is the best work ever. And I thought, oh, so you do want my authentic voice, in which case I'll sack off sounding like a prude, because, you know, writing like a toff, it didn't feel like me. So I didn't like doing it. But I think we probably have got students in FE who are attempting that as well. They're trying to sound like the academic dry style that they're given, and they haven't had an opportunity to air their feelings about it in a way that isn't going to get caught by a checker, an AI checker, which we're adamant don't use. We can only advise people not to use them. I think sometimes people do still talk about the score they've seen somewhere. And I think, hang on, where did that come from? Score. We had an instance in a controlled assessment where I had a panicked call because a score had come in 43% AI use in an assessment where they had no access to the internet. So I was like, well, I think you're all right. But of course, it took me a while to unpick that this had been a score given out by a popular tool, a popular AI plagiarism checker. Which now I'm thrilled to say our brilliant head of HE was like, turn off the AI feature in that, please. And we had to go through the guidebook to find out how to do it. You know, had to basically ring up the company and go, how do we turn this off? And they were desperate for us not to turn it off. But for teachers, I think it boils down to trust your gut with plagiarism, particularly in FE. Typically speaking, certainly as an English GCSE teacher, you know somebody else has written or something else has written it. It's the same old, did your mum write this? I remember being livid aged about 16 when my mate had his mum help him with his geography homework. The injustice of it burned so strongly, but she got PhD in it, for goodness sake. So of course she was going to help. But it didn't feel fair. And so knowing that he'd done it and was getting false credit for it irked me. And I know that students tell us that they don't like the idea that other students might be getting away with it. Scott Hayden at BCOT's been very clear, had some great showcase students on stage talking about how they don't want AI to be used in the wrong way because it isn't fair and they don't see that it as being acceptable. But as a teacher, typically speaking, I'd say you can still largely, as a rule of thumb, trust your gut because you know. And then it's just a conversation, isn't it? Whether you call it a viva or a chat, you can ask the student, what does that word mean? I had a student a few months ago use disambiguate. I had mentioned something along those lines at the beginning of the lesson, and I did think, oh, I'm over pitching this, but then as I saw her write it, I was like, is that a recall? Has she remembered that? But no, there were a number of other words, homogenification, and I thought, for somebody who's resitting English, this is unlikely. So we had a conversation. What does that mean? I think she said nice, cool. Was that no? So then that exposed it, and then it was like, well, you know, good. Innovative, well done. I know what's happened here. You've probably got ChatGPT on your phone. Good thinking. If you're using a bit of AI, and then they think, oh, okay, we can talk about this. We can come clean. So usually the conversation exposes it. Whereas conversely, we had a student who was accused of using plagiarism because one of the first words that came up was delve. And delve is seen, certainly by the LinkedIn community, as being one of those telltale signs of AI. But English isn't her first language. So yes, she's learned the word delve from AI, but she was using it in the correct placement in the sentence because she's learned a new word, and it feels mean that she can't use it. And this doesn't work for all essays, but I tend to try and advise teachers, if they can, be open to allowing it on an assessment or an assignment, to getting the student, this feels old fashioned, but to copy and paste all their inputs, all their prompts and all the outputs into an appendix and submit that. If you want full transparency, show anything in one chat that you asked about that topic, and then you've come clear. And you can't cite it in the body of the essay because you'll have then had to go fact check it and find the original source. So you need to find the original source and cite that, but you should still have it in the bibliography and have it as an appendix, because modeling it with staff, modeling it is a great step as well, showing how to use it. But then, yes, we know they'll use it. A great example I heard was somebody saying, do the homework, get AI to do the homework, sure, but then fact check it in class. And it's all about that critical thinking faculty of drilling down to the sources. Where's that come from? Do we trust it? And actually even teaching the students to write in the prompt, you know, to be cold with it, to be as cold as ice and say, right, where, do not make anything up. Give me full sources. I want 5 articles, but they must be within the last 5 years. They must be from academic journals. Don't give me answers. I just want you to prompt it. You know, you can really specify what you want, and how you want the output, and whether that be in a gem or in your own prompt, giving students the actual underlying literacy skills to be able to prompt themselves so that they feel confident in how the in affects the out, so that they don't get garbage in and garbage out, I think is a key skill. I mean, AI is a passion project of mine, so I'll shut up now. Alex meekly putting her hand up like, oh, can I have a go?
Just a quick share, talking about memorizing. So we just had formative assessment to writing for ESOL adults. We had a very interesting piece of writing, capital letters in place, all the spellings, a perfect piece of writing for that level. But at the end, the placeholders and written name on it. So that student actually memorized the whole paragraph, every single word. And it's memorized where to put the placeholders and the word name.
Wow. That is incredible. That is conscientious gone far, isn't it? I mean, I've had that with students memorizing entire question 5 answers though for a creative writing bit on an English GCSE. You know, I'll write a story and then I'll rewrite that in the exam, and you can see where they're coming from. It's at that point you recognize that the test isn't functioning to do what it's trying to do, which is check their literacy skills, check their confidence of creative writing. You think this is slightly where the disjoint between being in a classroom and assessment has proved that it's broken. But then equally, sometimes you get suspicions and they're unfounded. When I started at BCA, the Agric College 6 years ago, I remember my colleague saying, just keep an eye over such and such's shoulder because this work is really outstanding. And I want to give them the story prize, but I'm suspicious it's so good that they've cheated with their vocab. And in the next lesson, I watched him and he had outstanding vocabulary, like he at his fingertips he was using words that you would not expect a resitter to be using, but he didn't speak like that because he probably didn't want to get bullied, because a 17-year-old that uses words like loquacious is going to get it in the net. You know, somebody's going to be haranguing him on the side, whereas it was genuinely him. So I think there'll always be suspicion both ways, and it's about navigating it in a conversation. How did you deal with that one, Alex? Talk to me about name placeholder.
So we just had a laugh, but then again, so the teacher had a chat, very restorative chat with the student. Yeah. So they're still developing some of the skills, so they can they memorize that paragraph, so they learn the words. That's also positive.
I think it's such an amazing conversation with it, especially the further education part, because when I went to university the second time round after failing miserably 10 years beforehand, I'm massively dyslexic, and I was told, get a proofreader and get that proofreader to proofread every essay you write. And that was seen as absolutely fine. The tutors would even give me some contact details of people that did proofreading. Yet now, all of a sudden, because the proofreader's a computer, people are getting a bit sketchy. Now, I know for a fact my proofreader got me my first. I'd have got a 2-1, but the difference between the 2-1 and the first was the proofreading. And
Firstly, a first. Come on, very good. Well done, Peter.
That was only because it was proofread. If it wasn't for that, and that was that was actively pushed by my tutors and never questioned, that every single one of my essays got proofread by at least 3 individuals. So it's just, I think it's that really interesting crossover between when we're looking at a human doing something and an AI doing something, and are we getting annoyed just because it's more prevalent, or are we getting annoyed because it's a computer doing it? I think it's a really interesting question, and it's one that's always stuck with me. But let's move into the rapid fire question to wrap up. So we've got a couple of rapid fire questions for you. First one. We covered the idea of the skills gap, and it seems like we are in agreement. There is a skills gap in places. We've mentioned file organization. We've mentioned professional emails. Is there another pet peeve for you that in that basic digital skills area, or are those the 2 main ones?
I think we already mentioned, as you said, so the file organization. Many students can create content on their phone, but using a proper device like a laptop or Chromebook, they probably struggling remembering the passwords.
Yeah, I was about to say logging in. Logging in seems like the most basic step, but actually there's so much in that. And for a domain, I work for Windsor Forest Colleges Group. That is windsor-forest.ac.uk. And that's not me plugging it. That's me pointing out that when you've got to type that in to get into your device, you need to know where the hyphen is. You need to know where the @ symbol is. And actually, if you are not a native QWERTY typer, you've then got to do that circling around the keyboard thing that I remember doing as a kid, trying to find every letter. And they are quite stretched across the keyboard for Windsor Forest. So they've got to navigate that, and they aren't then confident with how to get the multi-factor through. So I think logging in seems like such a basic step to us as adults and education professionals, but actually, or even just people living in the 21st century where that's the way you have to log into things. We're just used to log in and multi-factor, but that is still quite new to a lot of them. And then I'd say as a bonus extra, spreadsheets. Often they want to know spreadsheets. They figure that it's going to be a useful employable skill, but they've never been shown them. I've had students say, we never did spreadsheets at school. And I'm worried because I want to be able to analyze data for my report. They're coming with a really conscientious, valid reason, hungry to learn.
But again, I think they're really key things. Like we, as primary educators, that's always been a big pet peeve of mine, is children logging in. Like primarily teaching year 5 pupils, year 4 pupils, going, surely they've learned to log in by now. But now on the flip side, having the advantage of going like, actually, look, by the end of year 2, our expectation is that they can log in. So there's been that, like, for me, being able to push that agenda, make sure that they can log in. By the time they've got a one-to-one device, they should be able to log in. So we're not like faffing around with that.
Yeah.
So hopefully long term the secondary schools pick that up and carry that on. And then
thanks, Matt. If you could come and work in a postcode quite close to me, that would be great. But I do think that tends to be it's a pain point that gets kicked down the road, because we've tried to make it part of our enrollment and onboarding is going through that login process, and then people don't want to do that because it postpones people getting into the information forms we need to complete the enrollment cycle. But if we don't do the IT bit there, then the next point that we do it is when they're in induction, and they don't want to do it in induction because it spoils the flow of the induction. So then they never get into their college emails, or they can't do the access the things we need. So it's where it comes, because it's a bit of a headache, but it's where to time it, and no one ever really wants to tackle it. So yeah, the earlier the better, if you wouldn't mind. Thanks so much.
Thank you. It's all good. It's all good. If you could add one digital literacy requirement to the national curriculum for all post-16 and adult learners, what would it be?
Critical AI literacy. How AI tools work at a basic level, what where biases can appear, how trust or mistrust the outputs. I think it's a life skill now for everyone.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Stuff that used to be called a soft skill is now essentially key skill. I think it's really interesting that all the points of an AI prompt, the creative writing, the articulation of an idea, the iteration on the way in, and then on the output, the evaluation, the critical thinking is so important. Yeah, I agree. I also think one digital skill, just to spin it away from just being AI, would be confidence using a QWERTY keyboard. I don't know how much longer the QWERTY keyboard is going to be around. I think there's a world in which in the next 10 years it could die. But for now, and until that person is able to use voice typing to log in, or their face on a typical device, I think it would be, I see the pain and the frustration, and I remember that feeling typing a letter to my aunt when I was a kid, of spooling around the keyboard trying to find a letter. And it's frustrating because you've got the idea and the idea is dead by the time you found the letter. For the one word, never mind, you know, Peter, I'm dyslexic as well. Never mind trying to get to the end of the sentence whilst that thought's in your mind. So yeah, some confidence with touch typing. Not suggesting we bring back Mavis Beacon, but
amazing. So
I don't know if you found it with any of your adult learners, the iOS issue at the moment with the keyboards. Have you seen that? Where, like, at the moment, iOS devices have broken their keyboard to an extent where you do the finger drag to make a word and it will give you a completely different word.
Yeah.
And it's like become quite common across the iOS landscape at the moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, to add to the problem of some people having difficulty spelling, things like that, you've also got the issues of technology that sometimes don't want to spell for you anyway.
Yeah, true. I've gone from iPhone to another device and struggled without the drag typing. I was like, hang on, I've got to type each letter. Feels like it's only one step further removed from the T9 dictionary where you'd type each number and wait for the word to come up. Roddy always came up as sneeze because the R is on the same key as the S.
When I put my Chromebook into tablet mode, I always expect to do that. And then I go, oh yeah, it doesn't do that. Oops.
I've got one cheeky bonus extra actually on the one digital skill would probably be looping back to something I said earlier, is a focus filter, knowing how to use the don't disturb, knowing how to turn off notifications, knowing how to put a locked down time on yourself so that they can control their own digital habits. And that's something I would say isn't just for students either. I'd say that's probably for staff. For all of us could benefit from knowing better how to use those focus times, focus tools on our phones.
I mean, you've just given us one great bit of advice there. The last bit of closing advice. If there was one bit of advice you could give to an FE or HE or the community sector about who feel their students are disengaging with digital, what would that one small tweak or change be that can get students re-engaged?
Can I go for two?
Go for it.
Greedy.
So I would say if you've got access to the new record feature in Google Classroom, just try that. Add a short audio or screen recording to feedback or material. I think it's built into Google Classroom and it can truly remove the barriers, especially if you've got language needs or special education needs learners. And the second one is in Google Classroom. So when you post a question, so you can allow the students. So it's I think it's by default. So you can allow the students to reply to each other. So it could be absolutely anything like ask a curious question and let them discuss it and facilitate that discussion.
Amazing.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say the new audio feedback feature in the video feedback, because I think it's such a nice way to engage students. Yeah. So I'm going to have two of my own, actually, Alex. Since you've had two, I would say one is the video questions. So the built-in tool in resources to go and add questions to a YouTube video. I would highly recommend that, because it's a point of interactivity. So I suspect a lot of videos and a lot of content gets shared with students, but it's a take another. And why am I singing all of a sudden? I've got excited. It's the end of the day. We've all had a drink. No, I was going to say, take another little piece of my lesson now, baby. But it will be a video that will be shared, and it without pausing to take a reflective question, a video can very quickly become that wheel in the telly in year 2 wet play, and you're just soaking up the atmosphere of not having to engage. Whereas actually, if you stop and ask a question, I think that's a really valuable tool. But the main thing I was going to say was images in the stream, is using photos and colors to bring the stream to life. Because if the stream is just a string of text or assignment notices, it's not an enticing or appealing place to go. Whereas actually, if it's a visual reference of a slide you've mentioned in class, you know, an upcoming revision session or a cake bake sale or something that makes the students want to look at it, then it's a welcoming place. And just like we might put up beautiful notice boards across the college to welcome guests and students and make the place a welcoming environment, I think making the place a digitally welcoming place to be would be my top tip. Images.
But yeah, I couldn't agree more with that one. Just the simple thing about having your headshot on your Gmail account helps our students so much be able to know which class they're meant to be opening without having to rely on reading the text or decoding it,
guessing a letter. Because also I imagine that, you know, you'll probably come up as P or PR for Peter, but they might know you as Mr. Reeves. Whereas if they see your face and it's a beautiful recognizable face, they're going to go, there he is, ding. They'll see your face on the front of their classroom and know which to click. Yeah, love it. I'm an images person and a colors person. So anything that brightens the world. Pick a nice header. Don't make all the headers the same. Don't have 8 blue classrooms. Use color. And then I actually, nerdily enough, color pick those colors out onto my folders. So the folders in the class, in the staff room that have got all their work in, match the colors on my timetable that match the Google Classroom I've got with them all in. So I know blue is my 10 o'clock, purple's my 11:15, and yellow's my 2:15.
And the easiest way to create those Google Classrooms headers is probably Canva, because Canva's got lots of templates, so you can choose and edit. Yeah.
I actually sneakily think they've got some new inbuilt ones coming, because there's a roadmap to try and tweak the homepage of Classrooms so that it's got slightly more useful upcoming deadlines and appointments and what you can do in it. I think it's got some new functionality coming for staff and for students. On one of the demo screens for that, they've got 8 new looking headers. So I think we might get some new ones inbuilt soon as well. I've tried screenshotting an existing one and putting it into Gemini and getting Nano Banana to make one for a different industry. So there's an equine one, but it's got a horse whip on it. And some of my equine students would not like to see a whip. So I've tried, you know, give me other things that are related to horses, but you can have fun with that as well. Get some image generation on the go.
Amazing advice. Well, I think that brings us to the end of the episode. Aleks and Roddy, thank you very much for joining us. Feel free to join us again for the next episode of the podcast, where we will be diving into SEND this time round.
Brilliant. And thank you for having us. You have been watching the cast of GEG UK Post-16. If you are working in an FE setting or in a sixth form or in a university or anywhere, like Alex works with adults and ESOL learners, if you are in an institution that serves 16 plus, we'd love to have you in our GEG as well. It is not mutually exclusive. We are friends. We get on. We're all just trying to make technology do the heavy lifting for us. So thanks for having us.
Thank you so much, guys.
So your rendition of Cold as Ice, Roddy, was that MOP or was that Foreigner?
I would say it's probably Foreigner, because I recognise that name quicker when you said it. But I'm not good with names of songs or artists. I just recognise tunes. I'm a nuisance. When the new song comes out, I go, that sampled something, and I'll listen to it over and over again. I don't know if any of you play.
When you say the sample, the MOP sample is the Foreigner sample.
Yeah.
The MOP song is now like 25 years old.
We had oh, don't do that to me. We had I don't know if any of you have ever played Trevor Nelson's 3 Seconds to Name, but he plays 3 songs, plays a single second of 3 songs, and you've got to try and name the artist that unifies the 3. And the other day I got it. I got it right. I've never got it right before, but I recognise one tiny second.
Are you going to leave us hanging and tell us who it was?
I'm not leaving you hanging deliberately. I'm actually searching back through my, my WhatsApp. Remember who it was? It was Tina Charles, which is an artist that I would say I don't tend to frequent on Spotify. But I love to love, dee 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 dee. I love to dance. I love to dance.